Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Craziest 1v1 Fights in History. Today, we aren't looking at muskets, katanas, or battle axes. No, today we are entering the octagon of the human mind. We're talking about a conflict so petty, so long-winded, and so absolutely toxic that it makes modern celebrity feuds look like a Sunday school picnic. In the left corner, weighing in with a brain the size of a solar system and a personality like a bucket of rusty nails, we have the genius weirdo of Sir Isaac Newton. And in the right corner, sich Gottfried Leibniz. This is the story of the war for calculus. A battle of brains, betrayals, and douchebaggery that literally divided the world of science for a century. Get your popcorn, because these geniuses are about to snap. To understand this fight, we first have to look at our first combatant. Imagine your life as Isaac Newton in the year 1665. You're a student at Cambridge. You're brilliant, and you're also, to put it professionally, an unhinged psychopath when it comes to social interaction. You don't have friends. You don't have a girlfriend. You probably don't even like your own reflection. Then, the Great Plague of London hits, while everyone else is busy, dying, or screaming in the streets. You see this as a total jackpot. No more annoying roommates. No more professors asking you questions. You head back to your family farm at Woolsthorpe and essentially put yourself in a 2-year quarantine. Most people in quarantine today just watch Netflix and forget to shower. Newton! He decided to invent the modern world because he was bored. He's sitting under an apple tree and yes, der war historical gossip trop. But he actually liked the story and he starts wondering why things fall down instead of sideways. But here the genius pseudo-energic sin. Newton realizes that the math of his time is trash. It can only describe things that are sitting still or moving in boring straight lines. But the universe is curvy. Planets move in ellipses. Acceleration changes. To describe a changing world, you need a new kind of math. So, in his dark room, by candlelight, Newton invents calculus. He calls it the method of fluxions. It's revolutionary. It's the key to the stars. And what does he do with this world-changing discovery? He hides it. He stuffs his notebooks in a drawer and tells absolutely nobody. Why? Because Newton believed that if you weren't as smart as him, you didn't deserve to know his secrets. He was a secret hoarder. He treated his genius like a pirate treats a treasure map. He'd rather take the secret to his grave than let some imbecile or douchebag in the Royal Society get a peek at his homework. This decision, my friends, was the biggest mistake of his life. Now, let's travel across the English Channel to Germany and meet our second combatant, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. If Newton was a lonely hermit, Leibniz was the guy who never missed a party. He was a diplomat, a lawyer, a philosopher, and a polymath. He was, basically, the final boss of 17th century networking. Leibniz didn't sit in a dark room hating people. He traveled. In 1673, he arrives in London on a diplomatic mission. He's there to talk politics, but he's a nerd at heart, so he hits up the Royal Society. Now, keep in mind, the Royal Society was basically Newton's fan club, even though Newton wasn't there most of the time. While Leibniz is hanging out, he gets his hands on some prohibited fofoca. He sees some of Newton's letters and Rascunho's drafts that were being passed around by Newton's few friends like secret notes in a classroom. Leibniz looks at these papers and thinks, this Newton guy is onto something. But his writing is terrible. You see, Newton's math looked like a toddler had tried to draw a bird with a wet crayon. It was messy. It was confusing. Leibniz goes back to Germany and, working entirely on his own, he cracks the code. he develops his own version of calculus. But because Leibniz actually liked people and wanted to be famous, he did the one thing Newton refused to do. He published it. In 1684, Leibniz releases his work to the world. It was beautiful. It was elegant. He gave us the notation we still use today, the long S for integrals and the D for differentials. If you've ever sat in a math class and felt like crying while looking at ADX, dy, you can thank Leibniz for that specific flavor of pain. For 3 years, Leibniz is the king of math. He's the GOAT. Everyone thinks he's the man who unlocked the secrets of change. Meanwhile, back in England, Isaac Newton is finally looking up from his notebooks. He sees Leibniz's book. He sees the praise. He sees the fame. And Isaac Newton snaps. Scene, acting out a skit. Stickman, Newton is shaking a telescope at a map of Germany, Newton. Are you kidding me? This German guy with the fancy wig. He stole my fluxions. I had this in my drawer for 20 years. He came to London. He looked at my notes. And now he's pretending he's the CEO of math? Not on my watch. You douchebag. Newton starts a scorched earth campaign. He doesn't just want to be recognized. He wants to destroy Leibniz's soul. He starts telling everyone who will listen that Leibniz is a plagiarist and a thief. Leibniz, being a reasonable diplomat, is confused. He writes back, "Hey, Isaac, buddy, I saw your notes. Sure, but they were about series, not the core of the calculus I published. We just had the same idea at the same time. It's a big universe. Man, can't we both be legends?" Newton's response: "Absolutely not. This is where the fight gets brutal. Newton wasn't just a scientist. He was a political animal. By 1703, he becomes the president of the Royal Society. He has the power. He has the influence. Leibniz, feeling the heat, asks the Royal Society to launch an official investigation to clear his name. He thinks, surely these esteemed scientists will be fair. Oh, you poor, sweet German man. Let's look at the X-ray view of this investigation. Newton is the president. He selects the jury. A select witness. And then in a move of pique, douchebaggery that would make a dictator blush. Newton secretly writes the final report himself. Imagine being a boxer in a title match. You look at the referee, and it's just your opponent wearing a fake mustache and holding a scorecard that already has his own name circled in gold. That was the Commercium Epistolicum of 1712. The report officially concluded that Leibniz was a fraud who had stolen everything from the true genius Newton. But Newton didn't stop there. He wanted a fatality. He started writing anonymous reviews of his own report, praising himself and calling Leibniz a coward and a scoundrel. The war for calculus turned into a nationalist brawl. It was England versus the world. British mathematicians, out of loyalty to Newton, started using his weirdo notation. The rest of Europe stuck with Leibniz's Shugoi notation. The result? British math literally stopped progressing. They were so busy being patriotic about Newton's messy symbols that they couldn't talk to the rest of the scientific community. It was like refusing to use a fork because a guy you hate invented it, so you keep trying to eat soup with a comb. As the years dragged on, the Extreme Revenge Tour continued. Leibniz's reputation was in tatters. He lost his funding. He lost his royal patrons. When he died in 1716, he was a broken man. To give you an idea of how much Newton had poisoned the well, when Leibniz was buried, his funeral had exactly one guest. His secretary. That was it. No noblemen, no scientists, no fans, just one guy in a coffin. Newton, on the other hand, was still seething with rage. Even after his rival was in the ground, he would brag to his friends, "I have broken Leibniz's heart." Think about that for a second. You are the man who discovered gravity. You explained the laws of motion. You are arguably the smartest human being to ever walk the earth. And your proudest achievement is that you made an old man die sad and alone over a math dispute. But, as we've seen in our stories about Tesla and Edison, the guy who wins the money and the politics doesn't always win the future. Newton lived another 10 years. He had a massive state funeral. He was buried in Westminster Abbey like a king. He won the 1v1 fight on paper. He destroyed Leibniz's life. But there was one thing he couldn't control: efficiency. Within a few decades after Newton's death, even the British mathematicians had to admit the truth. Guys, Newton's math symbols are actually garbage. Leibniz's stuff is way easier to use. Today, every engineer, every programmer, and every physicist on the planet uses Leibniz's dx. Newton's fluxions are a historical footnote, a weirdo relic of a man who couldn't play well with others. So, who really won the smartest street fight in history? Newton got the statues. Newton got the fame. Newton got the glory of being the man who won the trial. But Leibniz gave us the language that built the modern world. These two men were Gagnos problematicos. They were capable of calculating the orbit of the moon, but couldn't calculate how to not be total douchebags to each other. They show us that intelligence has nothing to do with maturity. You can be a genius weirdo who changes the world. But if you spend your life seeking extreme revenge, the only thing people will remember is the fofoka. Newton and Leibniz's war over a single idea reminds us of the sandbar fight or the combat of the 30. It wasn't about the prize the math existed, whether they found it or not. It was about the ego. It was about being the alpha genius. In the end, they were just two men in fancy wigs, screaming at each other in Latin while the rest of us inherited the tools to build computers and rockets. Pause, what do you think? Was Newton a justified hero protecting his work? Or was he an unhinged psychopath who used his power to bully a rival? Is Leibniz the real goat for making math accessible? Or was he a networking snake who got too close to the flame? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear your takes on this intellectual blood feud. And if you love stories about geniuses acting like toddlers, or historical figures who finally snapped, make sure to subscribe to Problematic Geniuses. Hit the bell, join the gossip crew, and never miss a 1v1 fight from the archives of history. Because history isn't just about dates and treaties. It's about people. And most of those people were weirdos. Until the next fight, where the brains are big, but the tempers are tiny. Peace? Let's go back for a moment to that X-ray view of Newton's mind during the investigation. You have to understand the level of petty we are talking about. When Newton was writing that report, he wasn't just stating facts. He was acting like a historical assassin. He went back through 20 years of personal letters. He highlighted every time Leibniz said, "I'm working on something similar," and twisted it to mean I am stealing this from Isaac. Itwalaikaritech's murder weapon. The evidence was a semicolon or a slightly different way of drawing a triangle. And let's look at your life, said Leibniz during their years. You're in an over. You're the guy who invented the binary system you know, the thing that literally runs the computer or phone you're using to watch this video. You're a pioneer of formal logic. You've predicted the future of library science. But every time you try to publish a new paper, a letter arrives from London. It's from a concerned citizen, actually one of Newton's minions, saying, "Oh, didn't you hear? This guy is a thief. Don't trust his logic. You are been cancelled in the 1700s. There are no Twitter threads. Just heavy paper and ink. But the social death is just as real. You try to write to the King of England, who, by the way, used to be your boss in Germany, but even the king is scared of Newton. Newton was the Darth Vader of science. He was the master of the mint. He literally had people executed for counterfeiting coins. He wasn't just a mathematician. He was a government enforcer. When he looked at Leibniz, he didn't see a colleague. He saw a criminal who needed to be impalated like one of Vlad, the Impaler's enemies. The most disturbing fact about this whole thing: Newton actually had a nervous breakdown in the middle of it. Some historians think he had mercury poisoning from his alchemy experiments. Imagine a guy who is already unhinged now having actual chemical madness in his brain. And he's the one in charge of deciding who invented math. It's like letting a mad king decide who gets the Nobel Prize. In one of his notebooks, Newton wrote a list of his sins. He was obsessed with his own moral purity. He wrote things like, "I had dirty thoughts," or "I was mean to my sister." But he never once wrote, "I ruined a man's life over a math symbol," to Newton. That wasn't a sin. That was war. And this is the essence of problematic geniuses. We want to believe that the people who discover the laws of gravity or the secrets of the atom are saints. We want them to be stoic masters like the traditional view of a samurai. But, as we saw with Miyamoto Musashi, even the greatest warriors are weirdos who don't bathe and show up late to duels just to make people mad. Newton was the Musashi of math. He didn't want a fair fight. He wanted to show up late by hiding his notes and then crack the skull of his opponent with a wooden sword. The Royal Society report. Leibniz was the traditional samurai. He followed the rules. He published his work. He cited his sources. And for his trouble, he was slaughtered on the bridge of history by a man who didn't care about honor, only about being the lonely one. And so, as we close this chapter at a street fight, remember, next theme you read again a curve. You're looking at a crime scene. You're looking at the battlefield where two of the greatest minds ever born spent their final days trying to erase each other from existence. They gave us the future, but they couldn't give each other a break. This has been Problematic Geniuses. If you want to see our next 1v1 battle, Tesla versus Edison, the War of the Curieux et le Subscribe, we're going to talk about electrocuting elephants, fake news, and why being a nice guy gets you a statue, but being a douchebag gets you the patent. History is brutal. History is petty. But, most of all, history is serious. See you in the next one.